Hi guys, it's Crystal. I hope you guys are all doing well today and that you've had a good week so far. I hope you're out there enjoying the weather. The sun is finally out, so that's a good thing. If you guys notice, I'm back in the bedroom. Unfortunately, my kids and I became sick this week, probably because the kids have been in a bubble for so long and then they go to school. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but you might hear some coughing and everything like that. And of course, you guys might hear me cough too. Hopefully I won't have to, but you never know. If you guys are new to this channel, like I said, my name is Crystal and I do Canadian true crime or true crime with a Canadian twist. From time to time, I also do international crimes if they're recommended to me, if I'm interested in them, sometimes just to show the differences in the judicial systems from place to place, because you guys know not everything is the same. Canada is vastly different from the States. It's more similar to England, but there are other places where everything is different. So if that sounds like something really good to you guys, hopefully you will like, hopefully you'll subscribe if you already haven't, hit the notification bell. That might work, might not work. Share if you want to, and leave me some comments. You guys know I always say it, but particularly about this case. It's technically an unsolved case. Well, it is an unsolved case, but we do finally have an identity for this person. I wasn't originally going to do this case. I was actually going to do another case. I still see you, Frozen. I know that you requested it, and I swear I will get to it. I just happened to be researching something else, and then I started reading articles about this case. I've already known about this case. Yes, I have watched the CBC Fifth Estate on it. It's out there. If you guys do want to see it, you know I love my CBC. And I'm wearing my Little Bit Alexis shirt today. CBC. And I just decided to do this case instead. This is a case that I was going to do from the start anyway. It very much intrigues me, and hopefully it'll intrigue you guys too. If you guys do choose to leave some comments, please, no hate. There's enough hate out there already. We're just here to talk about things. Like I said before, my theories might be different from yours. And in this case, you guys might ask about different suspects. You might know of other suspects that I didn't mention. I can't mention everybody, but you guys might be able to give me another link to look into, which is really fascinating. So before we get into this case though, these videos are for educational and entertainment purposes only. And you guys already know, if you're returning subscribers, how much I love you and how thankful I am that you guys choose to listen to me. I know I don't have a lot of pictures. I know I don't have the music, but hopefully I'm giving you guys enough detail that keeps you interested. So with respect to this case, I do have pictures for it, probably more pictures than I would have in general. And I want you guys to know that I'll probably be taking next week off in order to prepare for October. So you guys know everybody in YouTube does it. When it's Halloween, we got to tell the Ween stories, right? I've tried to withhold... Is that the best thing to say, maybe? Some of the creepier cases to do that month. You guys already know Halloween is my jam. I've said it before. It's actually my birthday, so it's a big deal to me. And that's when I'm going to get into some of more of the grittier cases. We have one Canadian one from Japan. There should be one from England. It might be a two-parter. And I'm debating on which of the two American cases to do. I wanted to do 5 different ones, guys, but I don't know if we'll be able to do that before we hit Halloween. We'll see how it goes. But I'll probably be taking next week off, so don't wonder about it. It's just for research, and hopefully we'll be all feeling better then. So we're going to do the case today of Jane Doe, number 59. AKA Sherry Doe. She does have a name, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. So like I always say, guys, sometimes we do cases that have a Canadian twist, and this is going to be one of them. Don't worry about it. Canada will come into it, but for right now, we're going to go to Los Angeles, all the way back to 1969 in Los Angeles. You guys know that in the later part of the 60s, 67, 68, 69, America was just entering Vietnam. they'd really started to go over there in 65, but by 69, more people were being drafted. It was getting heightened up. And some of the soldiers were coming back disillusioned. As such, they decided that that war was really unnecessary, and they decided to protest against it. Protests were big back then. A lot of people were protesting for civil rights, equality for women, against wars. And you guys know the rallying cry was make love, not war. And it introduced a whole different type of culture, subculture, called the hippies, right? I'm sure there were hippies around before then, but they weren't known as that. The original flower children, who could meet up with strangers and they could be best friends after 20 minutes, and they'd travel around together. A lot of people at that point in time were seeking themselves, were looking towards their freedoms, their independence, and would go traveling vast distances just for adventure, just for fun. The 50s had kind of been very straight-laced, very conservative. The 60s latter part of the 60s really birthed this way of thinking to challenge the culture in place at the time and become part of the counterculture. Psychedelic drugs were in use, free love, all that stuff. But mainly, for the most part, the hippies were very peaceful. You guys know this. However, by 1969, things had started to take a darker turn. Whereas before, most people experimented with marijuana, LSD. There might have been some cocaine. I don't know how much that was in play at that point in time. Various herbs, peyote, things of that nature. They were quaaludes, anything like that. In fact, you guys know Timothy Leary in the 60s actually promoted LSD as a way to look into your mind's eye, but also as a way to cure mental illness. There was a thought process about that. I don't know if it came directly from Timothy Leary. I'd have to ask my brother, but he was the one that was the main proponent for using LSD to open your mind. But I think there was a medical angle there too. Let me know if you guys know. And it was just a very different time in 1969. So whereas before they were using the psychedelics, like we said, heroin actually started to creep in at this point in time. And more people that had been hippies and flower children were actually becoming junkies. They saw this especially in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, guys, come on. All those who come to San Francisco. But they were noticing it in LA too. And LA is very divisive, guys, because you have the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, and then technically right beside it, Skid Row, down and out, places that people would describe as ghettos. So you had opulence mixed with poverty at the same point in time. And in the 60s, more and more people were becoming homeless, down on their luck. They were disaffected. A lot of vets coming back who couldn't find housing. They were traumatized from the war. And of course, you guys know, summer of 69, something super big happened that changed LA for sure. But the world and the attitude surrounding hippies and the counterculture at that time, it changed it. And of course, we're talking about the Manson family and the slayings that are now known as the Tate LaBianca slayings. Of course, these happened in August. And various members of the family were in and out of prison. And in early November, it was actually Susan Atkins that started telling people about the murders. She was telling people that she was in a jail cell with. Now, at that time, she was being held for, I think it was the murder of Gary Hinman. And various other members were also being held on that murder. I want to say Shorty Shea, but I don't know if they discovered that yet. And auto theft. They'd been stealing the auto parts and everything else. So it was a very odd time for LA, and people were very afraid. All sorts of people. Because you had the Tates, the glittering, Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, and Stephen Parent. You had their murders in opulence, right? Right there in Hollywood. At 150 Cielo Drive. You had that. And then you also had the LaBianca murders. Now, they were affluent too. Mr. LaBianca was actually owned a chain of grocery stores. So there was some affluence there, but they were not celebrities. They were normal people. So you had the celebrities living in fear that somebody was going to come and attack them. And you also had the average Joe being afraid that something was going to happen. Fear was very palpable at the time of this crime. So, we got to talk about LA a little bit. You guys know this. So, Los Angeles is actually the second largest city in the United States, and it's the third largest city in all of North America. It has a population of about 3,889,747 people. So there's a lot of people. It's vast, it's sprawling. There's many different parts to it. I think it's a metropolis, guys. I think they describe it as that. LA is well known for its sunny weather, outdoor activities, its focus on clean living. I think it's fairly expensive to live in LA as well. And of course, you guys already know that it's the home of Hollywood. Many celebrities live there, or at least frequent there. Movies are filmed there. So you kind of have glitz and glamour mixed with ordinary people, mixed with people that are down and out. It's very sprawling like that. And of course, you guys already know LA is no stranger to violence. I didn't actually check the murder rate. Shame on me, I didn't actually check it, but I know that it's fairly high. First of all, it's a huge city, guys, so they're gonna have a lot of crime, and there are a lot of murders. If you guys know a little bit about history, you know that basically the Bloods and the Crips, two of the biggest gangs, right, were formed in California, close to LA. Actually, I think it was in LA proper. And, you had the infighting with that. You have shootouts with police, and the LAPD, super racist. You guys know this, at least until the 90s, probably much, much longer. I'm not going to comment on that. The Watts Riots had just taken place. I think it was in 1965. Don't quote me on that, though, guys. There's a lot of violence mixed with a lot of other things, but this was very much a turning point. So LA itself does have a history, and you guys also know that California itself contained a lot of serial killers at that point in time, and of course beyond. Now, mostly it's because it's such a sprawling metropolis, but with that respect, we have to mention it. So at approximately 3:15 p.m., on November 16th of 1969, a 15-year-old kid named Trevor Santocci was out, and he was out hiking on Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive in the area. He was just looking around there. Some reports say he was just hiking. Some reports say that he was also bird watching at the time. And he happened to glance down an embankment, also known as a ravine, they call it both, and spotted the body of a young woman. He, of course, ran home, and he told his stepfather, whose name is Dr. Murray, Abowitz. And of course, Dr. Murray Abowitz then notified the police. Now, this area of Mulholland, it was just off of Mulholland Drive. And like I said, there's an embankment or a ravine. And then down below that is a canyon. And this canyon is about 213 meters deep, guys. So it's fairly large. It would not be, how do I say it properly? It wouldn't be a stretch for us to say that whoever murdered this girl thought that she would fall all the way into the canyon and most likely either never be discovered or not discovered for a long time. So the police did show up. It took them about an hour, and this area of Mulholland that she was in is very dense brush, or was very dense brush at that time. There was a lot of sticks, trees, grasses. It was just it was like going out into the woods, guys, except, not as many trees, but it was very dense brush. So an officer arrived about an hour later, and this would be Detective Lundgren, Sergeant Rick Lundgren. He arrived at the scene. He was first on the scene, and he assessed the area and noted that it was about a 45 degree, you guys remember from school, 45 degrees. It was about a 45-degree angle to get to the body in amidst this dense brush. So he decided to wait for backup. Backup did arrive, and they were able to go down and get the body. Now, what they noted was that the body itself, during disposal, had actually caught on a low-hanging branch. It rested beside this low-hanging branch, so it was actually the low-hanging branch that stopped her from rolling all the way down. If the killer deposited her at night, or killers, it would have been harder for them to know that the branch was there. And it was more than likely done at night, guys. This is off Mulholland Drive, so I can't see it not being busy. It was more than likely done at night. So she came to arrest by this low-hanging branch, and that's what stopped her from going all the way into the canyon. So this would be she was about 15 feet down into the embankment or the ravine. She had fallen 15 feet down from the original spot that they felt she was dumped from. So, like I said, the body was that of a young girl. They initially thought she was between 20 and 23 years old. Her eyes were actually wide open at the scene. They noted that she had green eyes and that she had, they said tinted, so probably dyed brown hair. Yeah, I'll leave that for a second. I don't want to show you a picture right now. She was about 5'9", and they thought that she weighed about 112, 115 pounds. So she's tall and slender, and she was fully clothed. They also noted that when she had fallen, her left leg came to rest, and I believe her right leg was over top of it, and her left arm was bent back with the palm up, and like I said, her eyes were open. They were wide open, actually. It also looked like her hair was slicked back, but and kind of shorter, but that's just from the mortuary picture. Sorry guys, I've seen the picture a million times. It's all over the documentary, the Fifth Estate documentary on it. It's very graphic, and it would be very surprising. But they also noted that she had vaccination scars on her left thigh. I believe it was her left thigh. Just give me 1 second. And her left arm. You guys remember well, maybe you don't. I don't remember it either. But in our parents' time, grandparents' time, when they used to vaccinate you for things like smallpox or polio, where you'd have to get like multiple vaccinations, it would leave a scar. They also noted that she had a horizontal scar underneath her left breast. But it would be visible, so it would probably sit right there, and that she had a birthmark on her right butt cheek. It's the easiest way to say it. They also noted that she had several silver amalgam fillings. Okay, that's how they used to fill people's teeth, guys. It's still in use to some extent now, but not as much. They usually use porcelain or resin now. But the old school silver fillings, which was actually a mixture of liquid mercury and other metals, so not so good. But they did note that she had several fillings. So police believed, like I said, that she had been transported to that scene, that she was not murdered there. I don't think they found blood in the vicinity anyway. And this was due to the fact that she was also in an upright position. I'm not quite understanding that, but I'm going to assume it's because the body was partially upright. And they did note that rigor mortis was actually leaving her head and neck area at that time. So she had been dead for at least 12 hours at that point in time. And she did have some lividity. If you guys know, lividity is basically a pattern of how your blood pools. And it would be probably in her back, the bottom of the thighs, things of that nature. Like I said before, when she was found, her right leg was crossed over the left leg at the knee, her left arm back, her palm up, her eyes wide open. And as I didn't state it before, but there was absolutely no ID found on her body. No purse found nearby, nothing like that. No ID on her body. So you would assume the killer got rid of the ID, but yet at the same point in time, maybe she just didn't have it on her when she was attacked. It was 1969. Not everybody carried ID around. So the autopsy was actually done at 10 a.m. on November 17th. Keep in mind November 17th, guys, because that was the day when one of the cellmates that Susan Atkins told actually told police. Of course, there were rumblings around anyway, because I think other people had said stuff, but November 17th was that day. As I said, well, I don't think I actually told you this, that they knew that immediately the cause of death was stabs. She had been stabbed, and she had been stabbed many times, guys. This was not just once or twice. This was a frenzy, which is why they initially suspected the Manson family. She was stabbed, I want to get it right, guys, 3 times in the chest, twice in the abdomen. She, of course, had stab wounds to her hands, which they assumed were defense marks. They figured that she had either tried to ward off the blows with what she had, which was basically just her hands. She didn't have a weapon, or she was trying to grab at the knife, and that's how she got stabbed in the hands. And of course, her throat appeared to be cut. They knew her carotid artery had been cut from the stab wounds. When the doctor was able to look further at the neck wound, because it was a gaping wound, guys, he noticed that it was not actually one just quick across the neck. It was many, many small stab wounds to that area. But of course, some of the stab wounds had severed her carotid artery, which would probably have led her to bleed out. And they assumed that these stab wounds were done by a common pen knife, guys. Just one of those little knives, like think like a Swiss Army knife, you know, where you could take out the various tools like that. That's what they are certain, actually, that she was stabbed with. When they counted the stab wounds on her body, there were 157. So think about how many stab wounds to the neck and hands she had. The medical examiner noted that there was no sign of rape. We do know from before that a person can be raped without showing signs to it, especially if they were dead first. But there were no signs of it. They never found any DNA on her body, so there was definitely no little swimmers in there, guys. But also, she was fully clothed, and her clothing was intact. It wasn't in disarray, you know. Her jeans weren't unbuttoned, her underwear weren't bunched up, nothing was turned inside out. It looked like she had dressed herself that morning, you know what I mean? So they noted that rape was not a component of this murder, and neither was robbery. The reason being was that she still had her jewelry on. So obviously, if you're going to steal something, you'll steal jewelry. However, this person did dispose of her ID, or else she wasn't wearing it. So the autopsy showed that she had died between 24 and 48 hours prior to being found. They usually say circa November 14th, guys. And it also noted that about 2 hours before she had been murdered, she had eaten something. She had had some type of meal. They didn't say it was a large meal or anything. They just said she had a meal, and this was due to stomach contents. So she was killed sometime after she ate, more than likely on the 14th. They believe that due to the angle of the wounds and the patterns, the person that killed her was more than likely right-handed. If you're right-handed, sorry guys, it gets so gross. So sorry guys, you know, a little bit of a trigger. If you're going to stab somebody and you're right-handed, I'm right-handed, I'm going to go from the right side of their neck to the left side. It would feel unnatural for me to go from the left side of their neck to the right side. So I'm going to guess that the angle and also the way the marks were would go that way as well. So they assumed that the killer was right-handed. Evidence at the scene, and there was very, very little, guys. I'm going to guess these were from tire marks, but don't quote me because they never really revealed what it was that they knew this from. Revealed that the woman had been, like we said, killed elsewhere, and then been put into a car sitting in the back seat, more than likely. Probably ostensibly, just in case the police went by, it would look like the person sitting in the back was just asleep. Then when they got to Mulholland Drive, I say they, but he, the killer, when the killer got to Mulholland Drive, he dragged her out of the car, around the trunk, and I'm not sure how they do this unless they saw drag marks, and then tossed her body over, probably thinking it would never be found. They also noted that it seemed like she had been immobilized on her back during the initial attack, probably due to the marks on her hands. I'm going to assume they were on her paws, and that the killer was actually sitting on her when he was stabbing her. So like I said before, detectives had very, very little to go on, guys. They had no idea who this person was. They had no ID, and it didn't seem like there were any missing reports that resembled this person. So they had to try to find her with whatever means necessary they could. They had to try to find out who she was, because of course, if they can find out who she was, they can try to see if there's links anywhere. So they checked out her clothing in an effort to ID her, where various articles of clothing that she had on her was made, and they found that her jacket was made in Canada, and they found that her boots were actually made in Spain. So this led them to believe that the person, the body, was probably not a native US citizen, had probably just come to the US and was from either Spain or from Canada. They were assuming that at that point in time, or at least somewhere that would sell clothing like that. These brands were particular to those areas, I guess. They also noted she was wearing a pair of cut-off jean shorts, which were apparently from Massachusetts. I guess they were able to figure that out. She had a leather belt with like a brass buckle on the front, and she was also wearing a sweater, but nothing that didn't yield anything for them. They also noted her two rings, the two rings she was wearing. Now, the one was described as white in color. I've seen it, so I'm going to assume it was actually silver, guys. And it was patterned with Native American markings on it. And it was made in Mexico. They were able to find that out. She was also wearing a really distinctive ring. They described it as yellow. I'm going to assume it was gold in color, and I can assume that just because of a little bit of information from later on, with a large reddish stone, dark red stone in the center of it, which was actually a garnet. And these were still on her body. That's why they assumed she wasn't robbed. And they actually did release pictures of that, as well as pictures of her clothing, I believe, guys. But later on, probably much later on. So nothing came from this, though. No leads came from any of these particular things. So a forensic reconstruction was actually done of her face. We've talked about this before. You know how they can take a skull and put certain markings for thickness on it, find out. Sometimes they do this with just the skull to find out their ethnicity and things of that nature, but they already knew that. I didn't mention it, but they already knew that this girl was white because her body was so fresh. Sorry, guys, it was. So they did this in the hopes that somebody would be able to recognize who she was. And of course, they did have her actual face, but they tried to. When someone dies, you guys know that they don't actually resemble what they look like in life. I mean, there are similarities, but the lips and the mouth are usually like drawn back from the gums. The skin will sit in a certain way. Of course, it's going to be very pale. The eyes themselves can appear opaque. Sometimes they have trouble figuring out the eye color depending on what happened. Remember with Leslie Mahaffey, her blue eyes actually turned brown because of the concrete. So, you know what I mean? It just is a little bit harder, let's just say. But they also made composite sketches of her in black and white. And some of them included the clothing that she was wearing too, just to see if they could draw anybody's memory. But of course, no ID was made from this either. Just give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to see if I can pull up a picture of the composites without pulling up something else accidentally. So I'm going to do this, and I hope that nobody can see it, but you can see the two big composites. Oh, good Lord. I just knocked down my own thing. You can see the two bigger composites that were there that appeared to show what she looked like, or that they were trying to show what she looked like. And also, I'm sorry, guys, I'm just having a day. If you look down here, I just don't want you guys to see that. At the very bottom, you can see the facial reconstruction too. So they definitely did try to find out who this girl was. But of course, no leads, guys. There was nothing that came of that. So police, like I said before, initially suspected the Manson family, particularly because, you know, the 17th, you had that confession from Susan Atkins about the Tates. Well, she'd been saying it for a lot of November, but that was when one of the cellmates actually reported it to the police because they'd become so concerned. She'd been giving so many details. Susan Atkins. So they initially thought that this was a Manson family slaying. Because of the frenzied attack, right? We know they stabbed people multiple times, way more than they needed to stab somebody for them to die. But also because Reed's body was approximately 6 miles or 9.65 kilometers from the Tate murder site. So they really did think that this was connected to the Manson family. And they did interview Charles Manson once before ID was made and once after ID was made. In fact, Jane Doe number 59 is written about in Helter Skelter, guys. They did talk to him about it, and of course he denied knowing who this person was and all involvement in it. However, it's Charles Manson, guys. You know, he's like, he acted fairly crazy. I'm saying acted. That's a story for another time. But he acted fairly crazy. We know he did bizarre things. He often spoke in riddles and parables. At one point in time saying he's Jesus, and then the next minute he's Satan, and all of these other things. And he's a known liar. We know he lies. So I'm just going to say, who can say for sure? But they actually did speak to a caretaker at Spawn Ranch. And the caretaker, as far as I know, was Ruby Pearl, who, of course, was at the ranch during the time the Manson family was there. And they must have described her, or they showed her the composite. I can't imagine them showing her the mortuary picture, but who can say for sure? She said that she felt that this person, just give me a second, guys, quote, closely matched, end quote, a person who had been at Spawn Ranch, who had been in the vicinity, hanging out with various members of the Manson family in the days prior to the body being found. She said that she thought the girl called herself Sherry. So at this point in time, because they haven't had any ID for this girl, it was probably a little bit later, they called her Jane Doe number 59 or Sherry Doe. The Tate Law Bianca murders had only occurred, like I said, 3 months prior in August. The body was close to it. It was close to the Tate murder scene. It was stabbed so many times, so they initially thought that it was the Manson family doing this, or somebody that was part of the family. However, all the big players, so Manson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins, Bobby Beausoleil, Tex Watson, Leslie Van Houten, they were all in prison at that, well, not prison, they were all in jail on various charges at that point in time. Some was for murder, but not this murder. So on November 21st, about 18 meters from where the body was found, a pair of black-rimmed Liberty brand glasses were found at the scene. Because it was only about 18 meters from the body, LAPD feels, and they feel this still today, that these glasses were connected to the body. They felt that they were either dropped by the killer in his haste of moving the body, and then he didn't know where they were after that, or they fell from his pocket. You know how, like, when you wear glasses, if you're doing something and it makes you sweat, they can fall off your face. They figured that he dropped them at some point, and he was either too afraid to go back to the scene, right? You don't want to be caught by the time he had figured it out that he dropped them, or that he didn't know exactly where he dropped them. These were men's glasses, guys. They did say they were men's glasses. And they had like the big, thick black frames that you saw in the 60s. Now, a man named, these were found by a street maintenance worker too. Now, a man named Sergeant Dwayne Wolfer was actually present at the autopsy, and he was the one, he actually investigated the assassination of Bobby Kennedy too, guys. He was the one who was asked to look into the glasses. I guess he did, but any notes that he made from it were lost. However, another person was also tasked with this. Another detective was tasked with this, finding information out on the glasses, and they were able to locate his reports. The report was dated May 16th of 1972, and it revealed that the police had gone to an optometrist and, quote, other sources. I don't know what that means. And they said that the glasses appeared to be for a man who was, quote, very nearsighted. So that means that distant objects seem blurry to the person. If he was so nearsighted, though, you'd think he'd known that his glasses had fallen off earlier. And of course, like I said, they do feel that these glasses are linked to the case. So the glasses, very common, Liberty brand, was sold all across the US at that point in time. Now, Detective Cliff Shepard figured, and we're going to talk about him later, he's retired now, but at that point in time he wasn't, figured that the killer was more than likely in a rush to dispose of the body, and that's why he dropped them, just because he was in such a hurry. He didn't want to be found, right? So for years, guys, for years and years, and I'm talking 46 years, the body remained unidentified. From time to time, of course, they would update the photos. They did update them to color photos from the original black and whites that we saw, in an effort to try to ID her. In 2003, this is something that's a bit strange to me, guys, so I hope I'm doing this part right, because sometimes you get conflicting information. But in 2003, an LAPD detective submitted a, quote, piece of biological material, end quote, as well as like a little distinguishing feature bio, to the National Database for Unidentified Missing and Deceased Victims. And this is when the updated color photos were provided. I should say updated color composites were provided at this point in time. But they didn't get any hits from that particular website. And the composites, they may have uploaded a little bit later. So they later on tried another national web base or national website. Now, this is a very controversial website because it actually shows morgue photos, guys. It actually shows the dead body in a photograph in an effort to try to ID these bodies. It's called the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and it's known by the acronym NAMUS, and you can go on, you can look at these bodies. It's a voluntary website, and it's a national one. It's not regulated by the states. Some law enforcement branches use this. Many use it, but many also don't, because it's considered sacrilegious and shocking and unconventional. A lot of people are disgusted by it, but it is a very useful tool. It was actually started in Las Vegas. At that point in time, authorities launched the website with unknown dead body pictures to be ID'd. And this was in 2003 that they launched this website. Like I said, it was very controversial. There was a lot of uproar created about this. And many people thought that it was inappropriate as well, guys, right? Like kids maybe going onto the site, but there's a lot of people that don't want to see that. I never show them in my videos. That's why I put my hand over that one picture, because I feel it's disrespectful to the dead, kind of, to have to see them all laid out like that. It kind of takes away a piece of their dignity, you know what I mean? But this website was very useful. Though controversial, within the first 24 hours of it being up, they were starting to get hits. That was identifying people. That's what they wanted, right? So the national one was actually launched in 2007 because the Las Vegas one had done so well and it had generated so many tips. Like I said, it's a voluntary database. You can use it. You don't have to. Law enforcement can use it. They don't have to. Many do, many don't. So it just depends. And the website is used to match biological details of the unidentified bodies to reports of missing people across the nation. I don't know if it's international at all, guys. I don't know if like every country has a source of this. I guess you guys all have to let me know. It was a good thing that she was put up there, though, because in June of 2015, a woman named Anne was contacted by a friend via email. Some reports say it was just a single friend. Some reports say it was 3. So we're just going to say she was contacted by somebody because they had been on the Name Us website. And this person had noticed that Jane Doe 59 resembled Anne's estranged sister. As such of this, because of this, Anne decided to submit her DNA to be tested against Jane Doe number 59's DNA, and it come back as a match. It did come back as a match. So in April of 2016, now they were able to get DNA to compare with, because obviously the body was interred. They were able to get her DNA to be compared with Anne's from like a blood-stained bra that she had been wearing. Fortunately, it had been properly stored and it had been kept as evidence. So they were able to get her DNA from the bra and match it to Anne's, and this was her sister. In April of 2016, police announced that Jane Doe 59 finally had an identity. She was 19-year-old Reet Sylvia Jervinson from Montreal, Quebec. It's also worth noting that Anne is actually Reet's only living immediate family member. Her parents have passed and her brother has also passed. Now, in no way did Anne or her family ever believe that Reet was dead. They thought she was just estranged. In fact, they thought she was out there like Evelyn Collon's parents and siblings, just living her best life, and she'd contact them when she wanted to. So Reet Sylvia Jervinson was actually born September 23rd of 1950. Her parents were originally from Estonia, and they had come to Sweden, that's where Reet was born, in order to escape the Nazis, guys. They left during World War II. So they settled in Sweden, and they stayed there for a couple years. Reet was born in 1950, but by 1951, they decided to relocate to Montreal, Quebec, and that's where Reet grew up. Like I said, she's the youngest in her family. It appears that she had at least one sister and one brother. That's all I know. Now, her parents were said to be very religious and conservative, but still loving. Anne has said that Reet was, quote, a lovely, free-spirited, happy girl, end quote. In her teenage years, she developed a, quote, taste for adventure and freedom, end quote. But Anne did say, quote, her sister was naive and trusting of people, end quote. Probably too trusting. Look what happened. She had only been in LA, guys, for weeks before she was murdered. Weeks. So apparently, Reet was very good at art, and she loved artistic endeavors. She was particularly good at drawing, and she loved to sew her own clothes as well. She graduated from West Hill High School in Montreal, and it appears that she relocated to Toronto at some point in time, so maybe just for a few months. I don't know, guys. But she was working at a post office in Toronto. While she was in Toronto, she met a man named Jean. Some people say John. Some people say Jean, the French-Canadian way, right? It's the same name, right? The French-Canadian version of John. That's what everybody called this man. She met him, and apparently she was instantly smitten with him. She really had a deep love of him. He was said to resemble Jim Morrison, and nobody can remember his last name. In fact, anybody who met him, and there were only very few people that met the two of them together, said that they don't remember his last name, or they didn't believe he gave them a last name. Now, Reet never introduced Jean to her family, but she did introduce him to at least one of her friends, and this would be her best friend, a woman named Gilda Green, who also was monitoring this case. She never forgot about Reet, and I believe it was I actually believe it was Gilda that found the picture, but don't quote me on that, guys. It appears that the couple spent some time in Montreal, so I'm wondering if maybe Reet didn't come home on weekends, like if it was either not a temporary, like if it was either a temporary job or a job that allowed her to come home on weekends. It's a post office, right? So it'd be closed on Saturday and Sunday. But it does appear that she spent some time, some weekends, some days in Montreal with Jean, and that's how Gilda met him. When she met Jean and Reet together, they were with another man also named Jean, who was shorter than Jean number one. We're going to call him number one and number two. It's a lot, guys. So he was shorter than number one and apparently had like a Beatles style haircut. Jean number one had longer hair and it was like feathered back, like Jim Morrison's hair. Gilda doesn't remember exactly when she met the two Jeans, and like I said, she doesn't remember if they ever gave a last name. She doesn't think they did, but she does know that they were she did hang out with them in at least two cafes in Montreal, one called the Prague and one called the Image. There have been various things said about these cafes, because some of them said it was like basically a meeting place for hippie type people. That's where a lot of hippie type people apparently like to spend their time, but they've also been described as, you know, kind of a drug den, free flowing with drugs, and that biker gangs used to frequent it too. So I'm not sure, guys. So both Jeans, Jean 1 and Jean 2, apparently decided in that summer, late summer, to relocate to LA. I don't know what the reason was, but they decided to move there. Ostensibly, they were going to be roommates. So Reet actually carefully saved all the money that she was collecting from her job in Toronto so that she could go and visit Jean. That's how smitten she was with him. This is like a very fast relationship, but this is how smitten she was with him. And I want you guys to remember, it's the 60s. A lot of people just up and left when they wanted to start a new life elsewhere. That was the thing. Going on adventures, exploring your freedom, exploring your independence from people. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, guys. That was one of the big things at that time, was being able to do that. So it makes a lot of sense that she would be able to go. Everybody was free-spirited, and they said she was a free-spirited young girl. Now, they said that Reet left Toronto or Montreal. She left Canada in the fall of 1969. So I'm going to say in September of 1969, she left Canada to go to LA. When she got there, she decided she liked LA and was going to stay. This is known because on October 31st, she sent 2 postcards, one to her family and one to Gilda, talking about it. So October 31st, 1969, she sends these postcards. She's been there for a few weeks. She sends them. The one to her parents was written in Estonian language, the Estonian language. Maybe her parents read and wrote in Estonian, but I'm assuming they also talked it too, right? They're originally from Estonia. In it, she wrote that she was happy for them not to worry. She was going to visit the beach a lot. She liked the weather. She was having a good time there. She was going to stay there. And that she had gotten an apartment in a 4-story building called the Paramount Hotel. Now, the Paramount Hotel later became the Hollywood Executive Apartments. And then after that, it actually was torn down in 1989. So it no longer exists. But she was staying there. So she said she had gotten an apartment there. In Gilda's, she said basically the same thing. She liked LA. She was going to stay. Talked about her apartment. And she said that she was in love with Jean. Or so I can gather from what was all said about the postcards. Of course, it doesn't seem like she wrote to her family about Jean. Now, her family doesn't remember that, but she did tell people in Toronto and in Montreal that she was going to LA specifically to meet up with Jean. She also asked her parents to stay in contact with her. So there's that. Now, she was never reported missing by her family, guys, much like Evelyn Calan. Remember, Evelyn's parents got the letter that said Evelyn was happy, not to worry, she'd reach out when she wanted to. It was like that with Reed's family as well, because, you know, she told them she was happy. She told them not to worry. She was going to be staying in LA. They thought she was just there living her best life and that she would contact them when she could. They did look for her, but they didn't know how to create a missing persons report for her. Number one, because she was a continent away. Number two, because they couldn't say anything specifically had happened to her. She said she was happy. So what were they supposed to do? Call up the police and say, can you go find our daughter who appears to really like LA, but we just want to make sure she's okay. They had no idea who to contact for that. Like I said, they felt that she was just making a new life for herself and they would get in contact whenever she could. She was just trying out her independence and she would contact them at a later date. In no way, guys, and this was for everybody, in no way did anybody think she was a homicide victim, particularly since she'd only been in the city for weeks. So Reet had actually also told friends in Toronto and Montreal that there was another reason for her going to the States. She said that she was going to go and visit her brother, Tanu, his wife, and their maternal grandmother in Prescott, Arizona. So maybe she was going to work her way down. She told them she was going to go and visit them. And her brother did confirm this, that she was supposed to arrive in November of 1969. But of course, she never did. Gilda said that sometime in the spring of 1970, she actually saw Jean number 2, the shorter Jean, again. He said that, yes, he and Jean had lived with or stayed with Reet for, I think he said 2 weeks. A couple weeks at least. The year before, so in 1969, and that Reet had, quote, left soon after of her own volition, end quote. He said that neither he nor Jean number 1 knew where she had gone. She never told them. And he several times during the conversation he had with Gilda, he made, quote, brief attempts, end quote, to assure Gilda that Reet hadn't been in any danger when she left, that she had been perfectly fine, happy, and safe. He said, quote, oh yeah, she was with us for a couple weeks, and then she left on her own, and everything's fine. She was happy, end quote. So he kept interspersing things with she's fine, she was fine. Now I want it to be noted that this Jean spoke French. It makes sense, right, guys? As far as we know, he's a French Canadian. Jean number 1 also spoke French. But I think Jean number 1's English was a whole lot better than Jean number 2's, because according to Gilda, he spoke English very, very poorly, and she spoke English, but she spoke French very poorly. So she does admit to the fact that during their conversation, some parts might have been lost in translation or misunderstood. Sorry, guys, just give me 1 second. So her family, like I said before, did try to actually look for her over the years. When several weeks had gone by and nobody had heard from Reet, they actually sent a family friend to the address that she had given them in the apartment. And the family friend went and knocked on the door and asked about Reet. He was told that, yes, Reet had lived there, but she had left some weeks before. And that was all that came of that. The family also actually hired a private investigator, too, to look into Reet's whereabouts. But of course, he didn't find anything because, unbeknownst to all of them, Reet had been killed basically 2 weeks after they received the report, the postcards. So Anne herself has actually criticized the composites that I've shown you. She said they in no way looked like Reet, in the slightest. In fact, she said that they were, quote, clearly inaccurate as anyone can see, end quote. But, and that could have been another reason why she wasn't easily identified before. I don't know how many people at that point in time would have been watching the news about that. Her parents were religious and conservative. I don't know if they'd necessarily want to view, they probably watched the news, but I don't know if they paid a lot of attention to dead bodies, specifically because they believed their daughter was fine. But the sketches and the reconstruction didn't look a lot like Reet. However, once again, in all fairness to the reconstructionists and the artists, they only had the morgue photo and the actual body to go off of. And like we've said before, a dead body looks much different than a live body. I'm just going to show you a picture of Reet now, guys. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. Just so there are several. I hope you can see them, guys. Pictures of Reet right there. You can see she was an absolutely stunning girl. The larger one over at the top is actually a picture of her with her whole family. And she has lighter hair then. That's why I said it appeared that her hair was tinted, because it looks like in a lot of the pictures that she has blonde hair. Or, you know, dirty blonde hair. After she was ID'd, cold case detectives and, of course, Reet's family and friends named two people of interest, of course, two people of actual significant interest, that's what they said, in the case. And you guessed it, of course, it was the two Jeans. This was in September of 2016 that they announced this to the public, these sketches. They actually produced sketches from it. So police worked with Gilda and another man named Paul Robert, who actually had been in contact with Jean number one. It didn't really say a whole lot about number two. I think he was also in contact with number two, though, as well. He worked as a waiter, Paul did, at one of the cafes that Reet and the Jeans were seen in Montreal. And apparently they'd had an interaction because Jean, number one, had told him that he was a medical student. Who knows if that's true or not, but he had told Paul that. Gilda was able, of course, like I said, to tell police that Reet had met Jean in Toronto while she was at work, and that she had once again specifically gone to LA to be with him. But police worked with the two of them, and they were able to create the composites based on that. So Jean number one, Jim Morrison, apparently he closely resembled Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors, guys. It's Jim Morrison. He's more than likely French Canadian, they believed, and was said to be the taller of the two Jeans. I don't have an approximate height or anything like that, though, guys. And that in 1969 he had long hair, and of course these composites would be how they looked like in 1969. Jean number two, whom Gilda had seen in 1970, spoke French. He was not very good at speaking English, according to her, so he's more than likely French Canadian as well. He was shorter than number one, and he had his haircut in a Beatles style haircut at that point in time. Just give me 1 second, guys. Oh, I'm having problems today. Want to see if I can pull up the composites here. I'm having a hard time. I had it and then I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. So these are the two sketches. Sorry, guys. Those are the two sketches right there of what Jean number one, he would be the one with the long hair, and number two looked like in 1969, though. And of course, as you guys know, Jean is a very common name. It's the French version of John. Very, very common name. I, for one, think that they were more than likely aliases, particularly because nobody can seem to remember their last names or if they even said anything at all, but that's just me. It's also important to note that Reet didn't know anyone else in LA aside from the two Jeans. Remember, one was the reason that she went there. She didn't appear to be acquainted with anybody else, and she had no other friends in the area. It was them that she was spending time with. And it's also important to note that neither Jean reported Reet missing. So police actually also have a third person of interest that they want to talk to. And this person is a person named M. Lindhorst. He lived across the hall from Reet when she was in the Paramount Hotel, and LAPD believe that he either knows the two Jean's last names or can maybe even give a better description of them. Hopefully that he can help ID them by knowing either one or both of their last names. Now, apparently M. Lindhorst was a heroin addict. Police are really tight-lipped about what this guy is like. As far as I know, it's a male. Apparently, he was a known heroin addict at the time, and that he had also spent some time in jail. So if you guys are getting a picture of this apartment, it's probably not high class. He actually, in the late 1960s, tried to set a man on fire on Mulholland Drive. But police do not believe that he's responsible for Reet's murder. They just believe he has information about the Jeans. Or, as much as I can say anyway, like I said, LAPD is really tight-lipped about this person. Detective Lou Rivera is the person who is currently in charge of the investigation assigned to the case. And he, of course, called the stabbing savage and believes it was done by someone Reet knew as opposed to a stranger. First of all, the level of overkill. Second of all, the usage of a knife. Usually when somebody uses a knife, not always, but usually it's a very intimate thing. It usually indicates that the person who killed this person knows them. Not always. I mean, the Manson family did not know Sharon Tate. They didn't know the LaBiancas, but they did know people who lived beside the LaBiancas, and they did know Terry Melcher. But they didn't know Sharon Tate, and they brutally stabbed her, as well as the other residents as well. So you can use a knife when you don't know somebody, but usually it's indicative, especially with that amount of overkill, of the persons at least being acquainted with each other. He said that stabbings of the kind, the savagery that he saw on Reet, are, quote, usually a rage type of incident where the cases that I've handled, it's always been a domestic partner, end quote. So according to him, he's only seen this type of overkill in victims that have been murdered or attempted to have been murdered in a stabbing frenzy from an intimate partner. This makes sense, guys, of course. So Jean and Jean were the only ones that she knew. And she was infatuated with Jean number one. She had gone down to LA to meet him, to see him. Apparently, she wrote to Gilda that she loved him. We know that she was very much infatuated with him. So she disappeared shortly after living with them for a couple weeks, shortly after being there. And they were the only ones that knew her. They also never reported her missing, and nobody that we know of has ever seen Jean number one again. So they also didn't say where she was going. Remember when Jean number two met Gilda, he said she never told them where she was going after she left. She was just happy. So to me, it does feel domestic. It doesn't necessarily mean it is. I mean, but to me, it does feel domestic. So is it possible that it could have been Jean number one killing Reet because he was jealous or angry or upset about something? Maybe she rebuffed him on something. Maybe something turned sour. Maybe he was always a violent person. Maybe he killed her. Number two was out, came home, helped him clean up. Maybe both Jeans worked together. One killed her. The other one helped to dispose of everything. That could be possible. Maybe number two was jealous and killed Reet after she rebuffed his advances. A combination of something in there, but it seems like probably the two of them were involved because they at least lived together as far as we know. And of course, neither of them reported her missing. It could be possible also that if either of the Jeans were using an alias, which I believe they were, who's to say that they didn't end up becoming prolific serial killers known under different names? It's also possible they could have just faded into the background after this happened, or had gone to another country, or had gone to another state, anything like that. So that's being said, let's get into some possible suspects. I'm trying to hurry it along today, guys. I really am. Number one, the Manson family. We talked about this before. At the time of her murder, all the key players, the big ones, the names we know, Atkins, Krenwinkel, Van Houten, Manson, Beausoleil, Bruce Davis, Tex Watson, all the names that we know were already in jail on other charges, various other charges. But could it be possible that an associate or a hanger-on to the family or another member that wasn't currently in jail, could it be possible that they killed her? It was a frenzy-styled attack. Her body was dumped. That's not particular Manson style. Okay, this gets complicated, guys, because we know that the Tate LaBianca, I can't say we know, we assume the Tate LaBianca murders happened because of Helter Skelter. We have to say assume because it's not fully proven. That's the logical reason that we go with, but it could also be, remember, he wanted to start a race war, and he initially he told them to leave the symbols like Helter Skelter and political piggies and all that stuff, and a paw print, because he wanted people to blame it on the Black Panthers. There's another thing. Charles Manson was an extreme racist, but he thought this would start the race war. That's what Bugliosi says in the book, and that's usually what people believe is the motive for the murders, but it could have also been revenge, because of his music career. He thought he was going to be this big time star. This is how Dennis Wilson is involved in this, and Terry Melcher. In fact, Neil Young has actually said that Manson was fairly good. The Beach Boys used one of his songs and never gave him credit for it. I mean, they reworked some of it, but regardless, they used one of his songs. Guns N' Roses have used his songs too. It's possible, though, he was so upset with that because Terry Melcher originally lived at 150 Cielo Drive, and Manson family had been there before. I don't think when Sharon was there, but previously, of course, when Terry Melcher was there. And like I said before, they actually had visited at least one person who lived next door to the LaBiancas 4 or 5 times as well, so they knew the areas. All I'm saying is that it could be possible that a hanger-on or an associate killed Reet in an effort to impress Charlie, in an effort to make it seem like even though the family was in jail, it was more like the 17th that people found that out after Reet's body was discovered. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe to make it look like somebody else was doing the killings. It could be possible that they were just trying to get in better and be in the higher echelons of the family. Before anybody throws this theory away, though, let's not forget Squeaky Fromme, guys. Okay, she tried to assassinate Gerald Ford to impress Charles Manson. So Could it have been a member of the family? Like I said, initially police suspected that, but as of now, the LAPD totally discounts that theory. They don't believe it's true, specifically because most of the key players were in prison at that point in time, and because the LAPD actually identified who Sherry was. It was Sherry Cooper, a different member of the family who actually ran away from Spawn Ranch. She ran away from the family shortly after. So she's been identified. She's alive and well. The person Ruby Pearl saw was not Reet. It was living Sherry. But who can say for sure? Who can say for sure, guys? Now, of course, we also know that there were several other serial killers operating in and around LA and in California at that point in time. So I'm going to talk about a few of them. I'm going to try to get through it fast, guys, I swear. I'm going to talk about a few of them. Some of these, their murder sprees were thought to have started in the 70s, but who's to say Reet wasn't their first victim? Of course, we're going to start with the Golden State Killer, Joseph James DeAngelo. Now, he didn't start killing until 1974. He, of course, was a serial rapist first, and then he started killing people. He usually broke into houses, but these were houses that couples were in. And he usually attacked and killed them in their own home. Now, it's possible that Reet was killed in the apartment she was staying at that time, but Joseph James DeAngelo didn't like transport the bodies elsewhere. He just left them there. I just remember them talking about how he made them stack plates on their back, and if the plates moved, well, then they'd be in for more trouble, let's just say. So he usually raped women. In fact, I say usually because I'm pretty certain in almost all of the cases, or all of the cases, he raped the women. And also, like I said, he didn't start until 1974. Reet was not found in a home. She was part of a couple, but I mean, Jean is okay for all intents and purposes. He never reported anything. It doesn't seem likely that she is a victim of the Golden State Killer, but maybe he came upon her, saw that she was vulnerable, and killed her. However, his MO, his modus operandi, was definitely rape, and she did not appear to be raped, so he can probably be discounted. I'm just saying, who's to say for sure that she wasn't an early victim? The Zodiac. So we know he started killing in 1965. I think it was 1965, guys. It could have been 66. So let's just say the mid-60s. And they at least heard from him until the 70s. Oh, I also want to remind you that the Golden State Killer used to taunt police too. And it doesn't seem like anybody taunted police directly about number 59. It seems like that was kept quiet, but who can say for sure? So like I said before, he started sometime in the 60s, and he at least contacted LAPD, he at least contacted San Francisco. And it wasn't the police, it was newspapers, until sometime in the 70s. He was known to target couples, mostly couples, and he usually used a gun. However, he did have at least one single victim that we know of, and that was Paul Costner. Remember, the taxi driver. However, Paul was shot. But we also know that he stabbed a couple in Lake Berryessa. He did not use a gun at that point. He may have shot them later, but I know he stabbed them, and it was in a frenzy too. He also didn't rape any of the women, and he never robbed any of them. So that's why I wondered if maybe he couldn't have come upon her and the urge to kill was just too much. However, that would indicate that he had to have been in a building with her, because remember, there wasn't blood found at the scene. And the Zodiac was not really known to transport bodies anywhere, so it's highly unlikely that the Zodiac was the one that killed her. Sorry, guys. The Zodiac, like I said, was known to write to police, and he would often tell them that he killed larger number of people as the year went by, but he never specifically named her or anything like that. Sorry, guys. So he killed primarily in Northern California too, but I do want you guys to know that there are some links to the Zodiac and LA. So who can say for sure? He was more San Francisco based in and around those areas and that swath. But at the same point in time, who can say for absolute certainty? It really doesn't look like a crime he did, but we're going to throw his name out there. Could it have been one half of the Hillside Stranglers? Okay, so I know they didn't really start killing until 1977, and Ken Bianchi was not in LA at this point in time, but Angelo Buono was. We know that he was much older than Ken. They were cousins, and he was a mean, sadistic man. He didn't even like women. He just liked sex, and women were nothing to him. He was married many times, and all of his wives and his children attest to the fact that he both sexually and physically abused them. He was into torture. He loved to rape, and they disposed of the bodies, right, in and around the hills. Could she have been an early victim of Angelo Buono? They used, I mean, it's a possibility, it's a very small possibility though, guys, because, okay, there's no evidence that Angelo Buono started killing people before he and his cousin teamed up. He was more into the wanting to pimp women out. There's no evidence that he did that. That's not to say he didn't, but they're called the Hillside Stranglers, guys. And his main MO was to rape and cause a person as much pain as possible. Reet had not been horribly raped at all, guys. And she was stabbed. The Hillside Stranglers usually, almost always, strangled their victims. But could she have been an early victim? Could the torture have just, because he loved to torture women, could it have just gotten out of hand? It's doubtful it was him, but I'm going to throw that out there for you. So the last person we're going to talk about, by way of serial killer, Rodney Alcala. Could it have been the dating game killer? Before you discount this theory, he was known to kill in several different areas, particularly New York, LA, California was one of them. I think they said something about Wyoming. He was known to do that. He was allegedly not in the LA area at the time of this crime. He would have been in New York, but he used the alias John Berger. John is not a far cry from Jean. And it was said that he highly resembled Jim Morrison in 1969. I don't think he did, but other people say he did. So he acted as a photographer. Remember, guys, that was part of his ruse to lure people in. And he took thousands of pictures of women and children. They discovered these in a storage locker, and I'm talking thousands. 900 of them were so graphic that they couldn't release them to the public, but they were able to release a batch to the public. In fact, as far as I know, guys, there are still 100 plus photos that haven't been identified. It might be more than that. And you can actually look through them, as far as I know. Now, he usually strangled his victims and he raped them. That was his big thing. He raped a lot. Some people have said that a few of the pictures or a couple of the pictures in the collection that the police were able to release resembled Reet. A lot of other people said no, but some people do say that a couple of the pictures resemble Reet or look like Reet. Could it be possible that she is in those pictures? Could it be possible that she was one of his victims? He did try to hide the bodies, guys. He did go to great lengths to hide the bodies. And once again, I firmly believe that the killer thought she'd fall down into the canyon. It just happened to be, I don't want to call it luck, but it just happened to be coincidence that she got caught up on the branch. It was more than likely at night and he didn't see it. I'm guessing, like I said, I would guess it wasn't Rodney Alcala. I mean, there are a lot of similarities and there are a lot of things that add up with this. His DNA is actually in CODIS, Rodney Alcala's is, but, and a lot of people have said, of course, then it should come back. Police should have gotten a hit on Reed's body. There was absolutely no other DNA other than the victim's own DNA found at the scene, guys. There was no semen, nothing like that. No biological materials from the killer found at the scene. I don't know if there was, if they clipped the fingernails to see if there was DNA underneath of them. It was 1969, guys. Nobody was thinking about DNA at that point in time. So I don't know about that. I am interested in the glasses, and I'm wondering if the glasses are still around, because obviously they would have skin cells on them. I'm wondering why they never tested the DNA on those glasses just to see. They may not be connected to the case. They more than likely are, but just saying. But also, he was a person that left behind DNA. That's how they connected him to the 2000, the cases in 2010, to all of these other women, as opposed to just Robin Samso. He's dead now, though, guys. He actually died earlier this year. Rodney Alcala did. Not that long ago. But could it be possible that she was one of his victims? The time frame fits. Location, maybe not so much. He wasn't known to have been there at that point in time. But I'm just saying. And he also went by the name John Berger. That was one of his aliases. Of course, I'm sure there are many other serial killers we could talk about. Feel free to let me know down below, guys. Let me know if there are others that maybe it fits the MO of. So more than likely, guys, she was killed by either Jean number 1, Jean number 2, or the both of them. And this appears to be domestic. I don't want to say she was dating him. She was infatuated with him, but nobody ever said if he was infatuated with her. Is it possible, though, that these two guys, or at least Jean number 1, is a serial killer? Is it possible that he's killed elsewhere? And maybe we don't know about it. I mean, the fact that he didn't leave anything behind, you know what I mean? Very few clues. They weren't even able to identify her for 46 years. Kind of makes me think that maybe he'd done this before. And like I said, I do believe that these Jeans, I mean, really, both the same name. It's possible, but I'm just saying. To me, it seems like both these guys are using aliases, or at least one of them. And how come nobody else has ever seen number 1 ever again? It seems like he never went back to Canada after that. It could have been, now it could be possible that he's in another area of Canada and changed his looks drastically. They both could have changed their looks. It's not 1969 anymore, guys. And if you felt like the heat was on you, you're gonna, you know, change your appearance so you don't look that way. It's possible he was using an alias. Now, I believe it was one of the two of them or both of them, but I'm going to leave you with this. This is the last thing we're going to talk about. And that's the fact that Reed's murder could possibly be linked up to at least one other murder. There were a couple others talked about too, but this one seems to have the most connection. And it's that of 17-year-old Marina Habe. It's either Habe or Habe, Habe. She was killed approximately 11 months before Reed was. And this would be in the early morning hours of December 30th of 1969. So she had gone out with friends. They said she either went out with a friend or she was on a double date. So she had gone out that night. She was home on break from the University of Hawaii and staying with her mom. So she'd gone out. She got back at about 3:30 in the morning on December 20th. Her car was parked in the driveway. Her mom remembers waking up at that time to the sound of loud pipes, like loud engine pipes. And of course, she sprang up wondering what it was. She noted that her daughter's car was in the driveway. However, she saw a man, I just want to get this right, guys, running towards a black sedan and yelling the word "go" before he got inside the vehicle, and it took off and left. And of course, it was then she knew that her daughter had been abducted. I mean, the car's there, but she's nowhere around. And this would indicate that there were at least two individuals, someone driving and somebody who did the snatching. Could it have been Jean and Jean? I don't think she ever got a really good look at the man, though, because it was so late at night. So Marina was actually found New Year's Day of 1969. She had multiple stab wounds to the neck and thorax, and her carotid artery was slit. It was cut. She was dumped off Mulholland Drive, about 30 meters west of Bowman Drive, within 100 yards of where Reit's body was found later in 1969, in November of 1969. So we're talking about a lot of similarities here too, guys. She had not been robbed. Her purse was actually found close to her body, and it didn't appear like she was raped. However, she had had intercourse before being killed. Okay, so there are reports that had gone around, and you may still be able to find them, that said that she was found naked, However, the LAPD has said that was incorrect. She was actually found fully clothed. So her clothing was not in disarray either. And though she had had intercourse prior to death, it doesn't look like it was violent in any way. It didn't leave contusions or anything like that. Of course, we've talked before about you can rape a person and not leave marks. Sometimes it's not super violent, but most of the time there are contusions and things of that nature left behind. So she didn't appear to be raped. She didn't appear to be robbed, just like Reet, but they did have her ID. It has never, the LAPD has never conclusively linked these cases. They've never said that these cases are linked. However, Detective Cliff Shepard, the retired detective that we've talked about before, who was involved in Reed's case, I think he was involved in this one too, says that says of the two slayings that they, quote, look more than coincidental, end quote. That they're so similar that it seems like they were both done by the same person. There are too many connecting factors to believe it could only be coincidence that they were killed in the same fashion and left in the same area in relatively the same state, let's just say. So of course, guys, the question becomes, were they killed by the same person? I want you guys to also know that Marina, that summer, or at least I should say at the time that she was abducted, was dating a man who went by the name of John Herberg. So we've got another John connection. However, no one said he had an accent or anything like that. I'm just saying it's an interesting point. Now, initially, once again, the Manson family was suspected in her murder. She came from a fairly affluent family. I guess her dad is a writer. He's known in LA. He might be known internationally too. I'm not sure. She came from an affluent family, and Reed's family was also probably upper middle class guys. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Do you think that Reet and Marina's cases should be connected? Do you think that it was the same man? Do you think that this mysterious John, God, it's hard to say. Do you think that they're connected, guys? Do you think they're the same person? Is it possible that this guy was faking an accent the whole time? You'd think that Reet would know, obviously, because she knows how to speak French. But I'm just wondering, could it be possible that they're the same guy? Do you think she was killed by a serial killer? Do you think she was killed by one of the ones we've talked about? Probably not. I'm just saying, I wanted to throw some names out there. Do you guys know of any other ones that maybe I didn't name that it seems more similar to? Who do you guys think killed Reed? I myself think it was Jean, or both of them, some combination of the two of them. But who can say for sure? You guys let me know what you think down below. It's a very perplexing case. In the end, I'm glad at least they could identify her so that she has a name, but also so that her sister can know what happened to her. Do I believe this case will be solved? With the absence of a last name and the absence of DNA, I don't know, guys. Unless they test the glasses. I wonder why they've never tested the glasses. But let me know what you guys think down below. I hope you guys have a good couple weeks, and I will see you at the end of September, where we're going to come at it with some creepy stories. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye for now.